Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire. And when I'm not interviewing inspiring entrepreneurs, I'm listening to Stephanie O'Brien on the Moved by Purpose podcast.
You need to mourn. You need to grieve. You need to cry out. You need to acknowledge you're frustrated and disappointed and discouraged, but you don't want to stay there. You need to release it, but you don't want to ignore it, and you don't want to stay there.
Are you longing to know what your purpose is? Are you on the wrong career path? Do you feel like there must be more to life? Don't worry, there's hope. It's time to be moved by purpose. Now your host, Stephanie O'Brien.
Hey, it is Stephanie with the Moved by Purpose podcast, and I'm excited to be with you today. Let me tell you how the day has gone down for me. Today is October 14th, the day of this recording. I record my podcast on Wednesdays. And I had 2 guests scheduled for an interview today. But then, in the middle of my first interview, actually it was more of the beginning, but still, my internet was working fine all morning. And then, during my interview with this first guest, my internet decided to no longer connect. Like it said I was connected, but then it really wasn't connected. It's a limited activity. So obviously I had to reschedule that interview, and then the one that was scheduled right after, I had to cancel and reschedule. And then the one interview that I had recorded, and it was fantastic and ready to be promoted, my editor tells me that she can't edit it because there's a ticking noise that is through the entire audio interview that was completely undetected by both parties. So that is 3 interviews that I had to reschedule. So talk about technical glitches and how frustrating that could be. And here's a point to this. One, I'm kind of venting because it's annoying. And it's been one of those very trying, difficult days where I'm just not feeling 100%, like the weather is changing and I'm feeling allergies or I'm fighting a cold or something. And then you're already not having the energy or the want to be working. I mean, as much as I love what I do, I just wanted to be in bed and sleep, but I had these 2 interviews and I had to get myself up and going. And then when you push yourself to do something you don't already want to do, and then you just have things not go according to what you need them to be doing, it's like you're already having a hard enough time making the decision to do it, and then things just, it's one of those days. I'm sure you can relate to me. I'm sure you know exactly what this feels like. So then I spent my whole day, I already had a hefty to-do list. And I spent my whole day trying to resolve the issues of the internet because I need it resolved because I work from home. And yes, I could go to a local cafe or place with internet connectivity, sure. But I have meetings scheduled tonight on Skype because I have some team members from Australia, and with a 14-hour time difference, their 10 a.m. is like my 8 p.m. And I don't always want to have those meetings in public places, or it's just hard to hear, or they may go over and I want to still continue working, and some of these places close at 10 o'clock at night, and some of you are like, why are you working so late? Well, sometimes, like today, because I wasn't feeling the greatest, I slept in a little bit. So, to just take care of myself. And anyway, I'm going on just to tell you how some days, or even what feels like weeks, because I just feel like this week, if not 2 weeks, okay, I'm just exaggerating. It feels like it's been so much longer than it is. But where it just doesn't seem like you can push through, or that like even though you're disciplining yourself to push through when it's already hard, it's like you're not rewarded for it. Like at least make it easy for me, right? Like it's hard enough as it is to do this, but I'm already feeling under the weather. already not wanting to do it. And I would love it when I make the decision to do something that I don't want to do, but I'm doing it anyway because it's the right thing to do. And sometimes you just have to get over it and do it anyway, that it would at least be easier, right? Like, I know a number of you can relate. Flashbacks of feelings of me when I was in my job as a social worker, in my day job, building my dream job, doing this, which you're probably tuning in to me like, oh, she loves this. It doesn't sound like it. Yes, I do. Actually, more times than not, I do love it. And the thing about a dream job is that it's not 100% satisfactory all the time. If you think that your dream job is going to have you doing things that you love and are passionate about every single moment of every single day, you are going to be very disappointed, because there are sometimes more things that you have to do that you don't like when you run a business than what you probably have to deal with in your day job. And so, if you're choosing, like, every time you go to your day job that you're not the biggest fan of, that you don't even want to be at, and it's hard, you're still making that decision to go. You are still consciously choosing to get up and go to this job because of maybe the consequences of not going. Like, you could get fired and you have a family to take care of or bills to pay, and it's not going maybe without a backup plan, or at least a certain amount of money in the bank, or some sort of exit plan in place, is probably not the best idea. So if you create an exit plan and then decide to quit, and you know what you're doing because you have a plan and you have things prepared, then it's easier to just quit. Anyway, so I know you all can relate. That was one scenario. And then my example is what happens when you do something because it's the right thing to do, no matter how challenging it is for you to do it in the first place, and how much you don't even want to do it. And then instead of being rewarded by maybe ease or it being enjoyable after all, or things working out for you and it goes better than you thought, and you're just so exhilarated and empowered that you pushed through and did it, and you're just so glad that you did it, instead it's almost like, nope, this is going to be really, really hard. It comes down to the attitude that you choose to have about it and the mindset that you have about it. Now, I can tell you, today is one of those days where, because there's a number of things I'm not even going to go into, because we don't have that kind of time, and honestly, you guys don't really care, I don't think. I mean, I'm not going to go talk and whine about some of the things going on in my life. But my life is so good. And most likely your life is too. Or a majority of it, even though there's probably a major struggle and pain point you're dealing with now. Something that's really painful and really, really tough for you to manage and to get through. That's only a part of your life. That's only a portion of your life. It's not your entire life. So let's say you can't stand what you do, and you don't have to, you choose to go to work every day and stay in a job that you can't stand, while maybe you're building a dream job or trying to process through what your next step is, what would be meaningful for you, what is a good next step, how do you even create an exit plan. But you have a family, you have a spouse, you have kids, you have friends, maybe you have a healthy community or church around you. Or, before I started this journey, well before I started my business, I had a family that loved me. I had friends that cared about me, but some of the decisions that I made had my life pretty in quite a mess. I was in a very, very bad, very toxic relationship. I wasn't connected to a healthy community of friends because I chose to let the healthy ones go. My family was very concerned about the relationship I was choosing to stay in, And so that put a strain on the relationship. I couldn't stand what I was doing. My productivity at work was diminishing because I was so consumed by this toxic relationship. And then my spiritual life was non-existent because I knew I had to let go of the relationship, but I was choosing the relationship over my relationship with God. So you can imagine how much peace I had. And so I know what it's like to have your life kind of unravel or fall apart or be hanging on a string. And that's when I decided I hit a bottom. And, through that whole process, I realized that I have choices. At that time, everything was everyone else's fault. It was never my fault. It was poor me for everything. I was a victim. I had a very bad victim mentality. And I know that this series we're talking about mindsets, and I will get there. And I mentioned the 5 mindsets. I'm adding another one, which is the victim mentality. And I'm kind of shocked that I didn't include this into my mindsets that keep people stuck. But now I'm including it. So now there's 6 instead of 5. So we're going to have another one. And this one is going to focus on the victim mentality and the mindset that you have. So today I'm struggling because I'm fighting a victim mentality. I mean, like, you hear it. You can kind of hear the attitude, the poor me, the woe is me. Yeah, that's the symptom of a victim mentality. And I'm exposing it in myself because I'm letting you walk out or pretty much witness how to walk it out. How do you identify it? What are its symptoms? And how do you finally do something to expose it or extinguish it? So I started off just not in a good place, right? You could hear me complaining and grumbling and whining about how the internet isn't working and how I'm so inconvenienced because this stuff happens and how I'm already feeling down and crummy and I just want to not be a responsible adult and just curl into bed and lie in bed all day, and then when I push through, I'm not rewarded with a sticker and a lollipop for being a brave big girl. Like, it's, and then, I just started, like, getting even more mad because it was my attitude about the issue. Now, I've chosen to move on. I am recording this podcast. It is probably for the best, perhaps, or perhaps not. It is what it is. Sometimes I try not to put labels on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes it just is the way that it is. So I'm recording this one to you, and you get to hear me just process through my thoughts. One thing I noticed was the attitude. The attitude was bad. And why was I so angry? What was I so angry about? Why am I so upset? Why am I so mad that I did make a decision to push through and I wasn't immediately rewarded for doing the right thing? Do you know what that is? Because I talked about that. And just because I'm talking about this doesn't mean I don't fight them. Like, I'm being very transparent here. I know how to beat them. I know how to beat them. But that doesn't mean that they don't still try to pop up and show itself throughout the day in various ways. Sometimes you're triggered, and if it had a stronghold and a grip on you for years, the walking it out process and staying in control and empowered over it takes a constant daily step-by-step process, sometimes moment by moment. So anyway, as you're hearing me, like, why wasn't I instantly rewarded with this being easier? Why didn't I suddenly find a ton of joy in this? Well, that's entitlement. I'm doing the right thing and I'm still not rewarded. Well, who said you're going to get rewarded for doing the right thing? Sometimes there's consequences of doing the right thing that are actually negative. I was just reading that in scripture today about John the Baptist. John the Baptist was very obedient. He did the right thing, and he got beheaded. And this isn't to, like, freak people out or to scare people, but yet just as much as there's consequences for disobeying God, there's also consequences for obeying God. And this isn't to scare anyone away from obeying God and doing the right thing, but realize just because you do the right thing, doesn't mean that other people's decisions or just other things open up and everything is easy and everything goes right for you and everything, you get your way all the time, but you're blessed. You're so blessed doing that. I mean, John the Baptist is still very honored. He's a legend. His story is accounted for thousands of years later. People are still talking about what he did, what happened to him, and we're learning from that situation. I mean, it's really a bummer that his life ended the way that it did, showing that other people's poor decisions have a huge impact on what happens to us. And at the end of the day, yes, God is in control of it all, but he honors the decisions of people. And we have the power to decide. The cliche is, it's a choice to rejoice. You know, I could choose, and I'm choosing now. I'm choosing to make the best of it right now. I'm choosing to find joy and find a blessing in the situation, not ignoring or trying to pretend that everything is fine, because I think that's really unhealthy when you stuff feelings and you're too busy trying to be positive that you're completely ignoring what's really going on and what you're truly feeling. You need to mourn. You need to grieve. You need to cry out. You need to acknowledge you're frustrated and disappointed and discouraged, but you don't want to stay there. You need to release it, but you don't want to ignore it, and you don't want to stay there. You know, these negative feelings are not a sin. Being angry isn't a sin. Being discouraged isn't a sin. Being disappointed and hurt and grieving are not sin. Those are emotions that Jesus himself felt and dealt with. And we are to do the same. So I'm going off on so many tangents. So back to the mindset. So it is a choice to be joyful. It's a choice to have a positive attitude. Throughout my day up until now, I wasn't happy. I was so not happy about the inconvenience, and I was choosing to be mad about the inconvenience rather than getting over it and moving on. Now, recording this podcast was my choice to move forward, even though the initial frustration and those feelings were still there, but I'm like, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on, do the best I can to deliver a quality podcast, even though these things are happening, and I'm trusting that it will end up helping someone. So you get to hear me capture what it's like to process through this. So here are 7 steps. The 7 steps to process or expose a mindset or a stronghold or lie that you're believing and how to set free. So if you're finding yourself fighting and grappling with a bunch of negative emotions, a really bad attitude, extreme anger, major irritability, and you're just in a very, very sour, almost foul mood, like no one wants to be around you, you don't even want to be around you, that's an indicator that there's a bunch of stuff going on. So what are you believing? Why are you so upset? For me, the whole internet thing not working is a compilation of many, many other things going on right now that I'm going through. Here I am doing a series on mindsets. And what I notice in my life is that when I'm about to teach or I'm teaching on a specific topic, I get tested on that very thing. And tested in quite a hefty way. And that's just the process that I seem to be going through, or that seems to go through. But it gives me a fresh perspective. It really gives me a great level of empathy to know, to really relate to what some people go through and what some people fight, and to be in touch with how hard it really can be. You know, I don't want to be talking that it was such a thing of the past that I'm not even in touch with it anymore, with how hard and how real these struggles and how real these feelings truly are to some people. I don't want to say, just think positive thoughts and it'll go away. Because that alone can start a cycle of condemnation, because as you're struggling to think positive thoughts, or as you are choosing to think positive thoughts and yet the feelings don't always melt away and disappear, that can make you think that there's something wrong with you, that you're defective, why isn't this working, or that that's a bunch of garbage and it doesn't work, and then you get discouraged and you give in to those negative feelings. Because I just went through that a couple days ago. But just because those feelings are there and that they seem to want to hold on and latch on doesn't mean that they're going to be there forever. And sometimes when you're so kind of what feels like you're being overpowered by the negativity, no matter what you do to expose it and get free from it, it can feel like you're defeated, and it can feel like it's going to be there forever. It's not going to be there forever. It's not going to last forever. And sometimes in moments like that, this is where a healthy community of spiritual friends helps. If you're not in a church, get plugged into a church. If you're not in a small group, doing life together with a group of spiritually healthy and growing people, go find one. Because they have been, my support community has been critical in moments where you fall into despair and discouragement, you're fighting depression, you feel totally oppressed, overpowered, defeated. Yeah, that's where they come in, because sometimes you can't fight it alone. And that doesn't mean you're a failure or defective. Sometimes we're not meant to do life alone. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to figure it out on our own. We're not meant to have all the answers. And yet so many of us try to. I think that's kind of an area of pride, which we talked about last week, as the opposing kind of evil twin of a fear of rejection, is that people can have a fear of rejection as well as pride, which I think is why people don't connect and don't reach out. They might be afraid of being rejected, or they might think they can figure it out on their own. So I just talked about how my little things of I'm doing the right thing, why isn't this easy for me? Why wasn't I rewarded with it being easy for me? That's that entitlement mentality I had to fight through. Okay, so we're going to, you choose to get over it. And then the victim mentality, the poor me, like entitlement and victim mentalities also go hand in hand. And I didn't talk about that. I talked about how people feel insignificant oftentimes when they feel at the same time as feeling entitled, but feeling like you're a victim often is hand in hand with feeling like you're entitled. So here are the ways that I get out of it. 1, I listen to what's coming out of my mouth. Am I complaining a lot? As I was listening to myself recording this, I'm like, I'm doing a whole lot of whining right now. Doing a whole lot of complaining. And that's showing me something. Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And that's exposing something about what's in my heart. So there was a lot of that. For me, it was, okay, feeling entitled, feeling like a victim here. Let's get rid of that. So that was step 1, is listen to what's coming out of my mouth. What am I feeling like? I was identifying and getting in touch with my feeling angry that things aren't going my way, which again was exposing, well, why am I so angry that things aren't going my way? Because I did the right thing. I didn't even want to do it, and I'm still not getting my way. Despite me doing the right thing and pushing through, I should have been rewarded. Oh, okay. So we're dealing with some entitlement. Okay, so we're dealing with some victim mindset here. Okay. So what lie are we believing? Right? So that's step 3. What lie am I believing? And see, I go through this so much. You heard me process through it and expose it and get rid of it, let go of it so quickly. And now I'm, because I do this. I walk this out. I teach you how to walk it out, and I walk it out myself constantly throughout the day to be aware, let go of it, move on, so it's not something that consumes you and has you oppressed and defeated through your life. This helps it last for moments, sometimes hours, maybe a day, maybe a week. It all depends. But for the most part, I try to expose it and nip it immediately so it does not consume me and take over my life. I am the one in control of my feelings, and I choose to stay in control of what's going on and doing what I can by following these steps. So after listening to what I was saying, I'm asking myself, how am I feeling? Kind of, why am I feeling this way? It's usually a lie I'm believing. So I asked, okay, what lie am I believing? I don't even know what lie I was believing. I mean, other than probably the fear trigger of it's always going to be like this. You do the right thing and it never goes your way. A bunch of lies, which caused irritability, it caused fear, it caused agitation, it caused a bad attitude. You know, why do I have to go through this? And then number 4, and this is for more of a deeper stuff, if you're just kind of doing this through a daily process and want to quickly, you don't always have to go through every single step, but, you know, the lie was, you know, every time you do the right thing, nothing goes your way, and it's always going to not go your way. And you're always going to suffer. You're always going to struggle. That's a fear trigger. And that was kind of the lie I was believing. And when did I first start believing this lie? Most likely there's still some issues that I'm recovering from my past. You know, when did I do something that I knew was the right thing to do? And I was obedient to the guidance of what I believe God led me to do. And I was not, the outcome or what happened or the journey or the process was not at all what I was expecting it to be. It was much harder. It took much longer. And because my expectations were failed, I'm still processing through some of those things. The most recent one was when I left my day job, before the business was in a place for it to be sustainable, before it made logical steps to leave. When I did it because it was time, because God directed me, it's time for you to leave and trust in my provision. And so that took a huge step of courage, and I don't encourage people, unless you know that God may be asking you to leave your job before it makes sense, you need to stay in your job. But a lot of times God does ask you to do things that don't make sense, that are counterintuitive, and I trusted him. Now, I was expecting that my business would explode, that things would come easily, that clients would flood in, that money would just pour in, because I took the risk and got out of the boat. You know, and I was like, which is funny, I was standing on that story of Peter walked on water. He was the only one that got out of the boat. He got out of safety, which was his boat, to walk on water to be closer to Jesus. And Jesus said, come. He asked first, and Jesus said, come, and he came, and his faith had him walking on water, but he also did start sinking. He sank because he looked at the waves. He got scared. He started sinking. So he wasn't walking on water that entire time, but Jesus didn't let him drown. He saved him right away, immediately. It says immediately Jesus grabbed his hand, pulled him out of the water, and they walked back to safety. They didn't swim. He still got to walk back with Jesus back to safety. But he still sank, right? So sometimes when you obey God, there are waves that happen that could distract us, that could shake us, that could have our faith last in a small amount of time, and we can start to sink. But the beautiful part of that is that we're not going to drown. He's not going to keep us there. And we're going to walk back to safety. But that could be traumatic to some people. Like for me, when I think back on the waves I was moved by and how scary it was to sink, and that feeling, if you focus on that and you fixate on that and keep giving that power, you ignore the rest of the story. How you didn't drown, how you were walked back to safety, how you were still an example of great faith to the rest that stayed in the boat and were observing you step out in faith, did it look foolish when he sank? I mean, sure, but none of them got to walk on water. None of them got to experience it. Just kind of trying to remember, like, what is it, when did you first start believing? Is there still an injury or an offense? Are you mad at God for failing to meet your expectation? Are you mad at someone else for maybe modeling this and teaching this to you? Did society let you down? Did an authority figure hurt you? And now you don't trust authority? Do you have a resentment about feeling like you're being controlled? What is that? So, like, you want to be your own boss. But maybe you want to be your own boss because there's this anger about feeling like you have no control. And when you work for someone else, you have to do what they tell you to do if you want to keep your job. And you resent not feeling like you have power or control. What's really going on there? What is that about? Maybe you're not wired to be an entrepreneur. Maybe you're not meant to, but you try to be because you have these issues going on about feeling like you have no power and have no control. In order to, instead of properly healing where that wound came from, you're out just driving yourself into the ground, trying to make something happen that you were never called to do in the first place. And I know that's hard for some of you to hear, but sometimes it happens. Now, I'm not saying that the resistance you're facing and the obstacles you have to overcome and the adversity you have to make it through is a sign that you're not supposed to be doing whatever you're setting out to be doing. I just will challenge you to question what's driving it. Why are you doing it? If it's the will of God and His empowering grace, if it's because you know that this is His call in your life, and through hell and high water, you're not moving, you're not budging, you're going to stay determined and you're going to stay true to what He called you to do, then great, awesome. But if you're driven to do something and trying to make something happen that maybe you were never called to do in the first place, it's something to look into. So ask yourself what lie you're believing. Ask when you first started believing this lie. Number 5, forgive anyone who may have been part of you believing this lie. For me, I had to forgive God. I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive teachers that hurt me in the past, parents that may have done something, siblings, pastors, friends, all kinds of things. There's so much revealed when you slow down and go through this and really learn how to be still, slow your mind to get to the root of the problem and finally be free from it. And then walk out that freedom. And you walk out that freedom by learning this process over and over again and doing it throughout the day, as I showed you earlier in this podcast episode. Number 6, you stop agreeing with the lie. Let it go. This sounds easy. It is not. If you gave allegiance to anger, because at one point that anger protected you, and that was a sense of safety for you, anger is an emotion that feels empowering. It's the one negative emotion that makes you feel like you're in control. That's why more people gravitate to anger than sadness, than frustration. Well, frustration is sort of like anger, but, a lot of these are frustration, disappointment, sadness, discouragement, depression. Those are more passive feelings. Like, those are the ones where they're not empowering feelings. And so people that constantly are angry, they're gravitating towards a negative emotion that gives them a sense of power and control. So, to let anger go that used to aid you or give you a sense of protection when this wound happened has given you the illusion of being your friend. It's not your friend anymore. It's not serving you anymore. It served you at that point, but it's not anymore. Letting that go is a lot harder to do. than you realize, because that makes you extremely vulnerable. That is an act of submission, and it's an act of trust in God to protect you. You don't have to protect yourself from him. But if you're angry at him because he didn't come through when you needed him to, at least it seems like that, when he failed to deliver on an expectation that you had, and you're like having to forgive him for that, and I'm talking like big stuff here. A lot of people are afraid to even admit that they're angry at God or that they're angry at themselves. Well, there are two common things. It's amazing. Some people can forgive other people for horrendous things happening to them faster and easier than they can forgive themselves, or easier than they can forgive God. And that's not a judgment statement. That's just to let you know, like, it's harder than it sounds. Forgiveness is a process, and it's not an easy thing to do, but it's an empowering thing to do. It's a freeing thing to do. Forgiveness is painful. It hurts. They say forgiveness is healing, but sometimes part of healing, a cutting away, if you think of forgiveness, unforgiveness is a cancer. And in order to get rid of the cancer, think about the way our society treats cancer. Oftentimes, the person undergoes radiation, chemotherapy, or surgery. All of those are very unpleasant processes to go through in order to kill the cancer. Radiation is poison to kill the bad with the good. Now, fortunately, in spiritual healing, in soul healing, you don't have to kill the good with the bad. You're only to the bad. It is a very direct way. You're like cutting right through to the source, getting rid of it and healing it. But think about that. It's like a cutting. It's like surgery. You're cutting through something to get it out. That cutting through hurts. There's a recovery process with it, but it's the fastest way to get it out. So that's what this process is. And unforgiveness is like a cancer. You have to choose to forgive, and that process is a healing process, and it's like surgery. It's like if you have to undergo something that feels really painful, that takes a recovery process and time to do it. If you don't do it, you will die. It will kill you. So you have to be willing to go through that temporary point of pain and recovery process, so you're not dying, so you are living, so you are fully alive. And then you stop agreeing with it, let it go. That's challenging. And you have to be willing to stop being in allegiance with or having agreement with these negative feelings, with those lies. They are not serving you anymore. And then 7, you exchange the lie for the truth. And you ask yourself, what is the truth? The truth is, back to my example that I had in the beginning, the lie I think was, this always happens to me, I'm never rewarded when I do right. It's always going to be suffering and trial and whatever. Kind of so dramatic for something so small. Obviously, there's bigger things there. Or, the healing process is still in process, but I am making progress from whatever it is that really triggered it. All these little things, just something as small and as petty as the internet not working for such a big reaction, indicates that there's something much deeper, much darker, and much bigger hidden that I'm still having to get to the root of and process through. Because getting that upset over an inconvenience that's so small and so minor, there's something else there. So I process through, let it go. That's a lie. It's a lie to think that I'm never rewarded, or that I'm not taken care of, or that I'm out to fend for myself, or that I'm not loved, that I'm not being looked after, that I'm not being protected, that God is distant and his hand isn't in it, that he let me sink. Yeah, he may have let me sink, but I didn't drown. And that sinking didn't come from him. That sinking did not come from him. Peter sank because he took his eyes off of Jesus and started getting distracted by the waves. Some of us get mad that the waves are even there. Why are the waves even there? Why are they there in the first place? Why can't the waters be still? Now I'm mad that the waters are even rough. But that's just something we have to accept. God's word never, ever promised, ever, that we would live life without trial, that we would live life without obstacles, that we would live life without resistance, without struggle. His word never said that. He never promised that. What he did promise is that he'll help us overcome, that he overcame, that he is the victory, that he is the solution, that he is the source, that he is the answer. But that doesn't mean that because he's my source or because he's my victory that there's no battle to fight. There's still a battle to fight. There's just the battle is won. I think a lot of people can get confused. Well, the battle is already won. Yeah, the battle is already won, but we still have to fight. We still have to fight. And I think people get really upset about that. So this is for someone listening, someone that's struggling with, why am I going through this? I have to go through this. Why, God, did you ask me to do this? And it's so hard. These are the 7 steps I encourage you to. I know my title says 7 steps to never get stuck again. Now, maybe I should say to never stay stuck. It's probably a more appropriate title, so that's probably going to be changed, and you probably never even read that title, but I was just looking at it. It doesn't mean that you don't get your feet stuck in the mud, but you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay stuck. You can get unstuck. These are the tools that help you get unstuck every time. Sometimes it happens instantly. Sometimes it takes a while. But if you follow these 7 steps, you keep healing, you keep pushing through, and you keep being empowered. So number 1, listen to what you're saying. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That indicates the condition of your heart in that moment. I started this kind of whining and complaining and venting about my frustration. And sometimes venting is a healthy thing to do. Sometimes you need to get it out. For me, it was kind of healing. Because I was listening to myself, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm paying attention to the feelings affiliated or associated with the words I was saying. I was agitated, I was frustrated, I was angry, I was inconvenienced. Well, what was really going on? What lie am I believing? That God said he would never have me go through moments of inconvenience? It's not always like this lie of like you're a failure type of lie, but like it could be a deception. You're believing that God said he would never have you go through trials, that he promised that your life is going to be smooth sailing, smooth waters, and that there's never going to be wind or waves or storms or mountains you have to deal with, giants you have to slay. You are deceived. And if you believe that's what his word says, and then when that happens, what are you going to be feeling? That God can't be trusted, that he's a liar, that none of this is true. Well, you believed a lie in the first place. His word never said that. He never promised that. So then ask, when did you first start believing this lie? And then forgive anyone who may have been part of you believing this lie. Step 6, stop agreeing with the lie, let it go. And step 7, exchange the lie for the truth. Ask, what is the truth? And receive it. Maybe that should be step 8. Receive the truth and agree with that. So that is a 7-step process to keep yourself from staying stuck and exposing toxic mindsets, exposing lies, exposing things that have you tripped up, in a bad mood, struggling, and hopefully you turn it around right away, let it go, and walk forward in peace and walk forward enlightened and empowered. I believe this finalizes my series on how to master your mindset to break free from toxic, limiting, negative beliefs and be empowered to live a life of abundance. And if you like this episode, make sure you share it with someone. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what your favorite one is. What step do you struggle with? If you need more clarity on a certain step, do you need examples? And if you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe, rate, and write a review on this podcast. This helps me get by more people, helping spread the word. And my Mindset Mastery seminar is November 14th in Detroit. If you are local or don't have to travel too far, I would love to have you join. I know I did a Pod 100 discount, so to get a $100 discount from the seminar, the discount code is Pod 100. That is good until October 18th. I know this is getting published October 19th because I love my podcast listeners so much. I might extend that for a couple more days. So if you're bummed you missed out on it, make sure you email me and I will extend that for you. And I'll talk to you all next week. Sometimes we're not meant to do life alone. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to figure it out on our own. We're not meant to have all the answers. And yet so many of us try to.